right, welcome to tonight's episode of the Group Therapy Podcast. Tonight we have a special guest. You're not the leader; you're the co-leader, the co-owner of WPI.
I'm the president, co-founder with my wife, whatever you want to call me, but yeah, World Paranormal Investigations.
All right, just introduce John, and you kind of already said what your stuff. How long have you been investigating? How long have you been going out and?
Well, I've actually been investigating for about 17 years now. Actually is when we started World Paranormal Investigations, but I've been investigating for probably close to 20 years now.
Yeah. See, me and my wife have gone. We had a group of people. We used to go in the summer, and then it just kind of drifted apart. Just because of just trying to get everybody on the same page. And then you start getting all the people that were like, well, you can come investigate here, but it'll cost you. And I'm like, nah. I think that, and I don't know where you stand on this one. You can tell me this. I believe that if you have to pay to go investigate, then them people will go out of their way to kind of make sure that, the stories are there, whatever. It's one of the ones that if you've paid money, you feel like you need to find something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's I'm going to try to be nice because this is your show, and yeah. I don't want you to get a bunch of hate mail, but I blame a lot of this on Hollywood, because when we started World Paranormal Investigations, we were able to go to a lot of places for free and do our investigating. But with Hollywood and the popularity of a lot of these shows, you got your groups of people that are wanting to go out there and do these investigations because they see these TV shows, and no matter where they go, they're always getting some type of evidence. They're voices, different things happening. So I think that because of that, these places are like, well, why don't we try to make money off of it? And before you know it, they're charging people to go and investigate. And I know, like you'd said, if I'm paying money, especially if I haven't never done this type of stuff before, and I'm paying money to go to a location, I'm expecting to see something or experience something. And unfortunately, the paranormal doesn't always work that way. You can go to places and just get absolutely nothing. So to have to pay for some, my views on it is, if the money is going for something good, restoration of a building or an old theater or something, or like Mansfield Reformatory, for example, they put in brand new windows and everything. So as long as it's going for a good cause, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, because I know that there's some places around here that have done it, and to be honest, it's a money grab. Because they're not doing nothing to the buildings. The buildings are still there. They're they've made no changes to them in 50 years, and that they've been charging people for the last 15. They've not done anything. What's funny is that I've investigated places that I grew up, and they weren't buildings, they were places. I lived not far from a crybaby bridge, and the bridge had long since burnt down, but supposedly that whole area was haunted. And we've gone and done that. Where I didn't live too far. I grew up with friends that lived not far from a place. It was the Lockington Dam. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it had it was supposedly haunted because people jumped off of it. It was supposedly there was a werewolf at one point. I've investigated that. We've investigated a couple buildings. We kind of investigated a couple cemeteries and stuff like that. And when it comes to my group, my wife and I'm the skeptic, she's the believer. I've got, everybody's like, man, you've got stacks and stacks of books on paranormal and demonology and witch and all that. And I'm like, yeah, I read up. I'm not going to go in blind. I study everything. So I'm completely I don't know, I look at it as scientifically as possible, and I tweak everything and I look at everything. And you know, like we had one guy went with us. Every time he saw something, he saw orbs, and I'm like, we're outside, there's a lot of mist in the air and stuff like that. You're going to get orbs because you're reflecting off the, you know, it's legitimately, you know. But then we got stuff like a smoke shaped being next to my mom, and we went back and tried to recreate that probably 4 times. Same area, same weather, same everything, couldn't get the same results. So it's one of those things that we try and we look into everything, but like I said, I'm the skeptic and she's the believer. And but we've seen some strange things though. But I mean, I couldn't imagine, you guys been doing this a lot longer. We have, and you've been a lot more places too.
Well, I first of all, I've got to commend you about the whole skeptic thing, because that is so important when doing this type of stuff as far as investigating, because there are a lot of scientific reasons behind activity that you get that, you know, can be recreated or can be debunked. And that's the one thing with us is we're all believers in the group, but we also have our skepticism. So whenever we do get something, we do try to recreate it. In fact, I remember we were at a location and B actually got a picture, and she spent almost an hour trying to recreate it, and she was able to finally do just that. She was able to recreate it, and it happened to be a reflection off of the ceiling. There was something metal up on the ceiling, and it just caused this image. And so, you know, I think it's really, really important to try to debunk stuff. And that's why, you know, when you look at our website, we only have a handful of evidence that, you know, we haven't been able to find an answer for. And that's why we put it on our website. And we've always encouraged people, if you look at our website and see something and you're like, hey, I think this is what created that, we want your input, because this is a learning experience. After 17 years of doing it, we're still learning new things every time we go out. And we have been as far as England investigating. So
That's got to be cool. I mean, I think we've gone on like a 10-mile radius. That's
well, where you live though, there's probably quite a few places within a 10-mile radius, because
yeah, there are quite a few places that at least they have legends locally. I mean, we've gone to one place, and they always said that when you go up to the top floor, you always feel like you're being watched. And I've been in that top floor hundreds of times, and it does give you a weird feeling. So finally, we got an EMF meter, and we're and you can feel it. It's like mid, and then all of a sudden you start, and it goes away. And you keep going up, and you're like, oh, dude, that's the electrical. You can find it. You can trace the wires. And then I look it all up, and it's like old bad wiring gives you that like radio waves or whatever, and it gives you paranoia. I'm like, that explains all of that. But no, we've got a not far from where I live right now, because I've moved since we did it. I live legitimately 3 blocks away from the house I grew up in, and there's a cemetery down the street that's supposedly haunted. And you know, I've looked into that since I was a little kid, and it's one of the ones where you're like, you know, part of me now that I'm an adult and stuff, and I got digital equipment and stuff like that, and I live literally like 3 blocks away, I'm thinking about going over there and just setting stuff up and just kind of chilling out, make sure nobody messes with it. and focus on this one thing, because there was this there's a statue, everybody calls it the Angel of Death. It's legitimately, I want to say from the early 20s, maybe, in the cemetery. It's a stone statue, maybe about, I don't know, 4 foot tall, of an angel, and it had a hand pointing. Well, the hand had broken off years ago. And this is a completely another story. I found that hand in a pond at the edge of the cemetery by accident. I looked in the water and I saw something, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And I thought it was a duck egg, because we were getting ready to fish and there was ducks around. I'm like, man, I figured a duck egg would float. And so I reached in the water and pulled it out, and there's this little hand, maybe about that big. And I went, that looks like a little stone hand. And my buddy's like, yeah. So we went back around, found that statue, and I put it back. And I, can't attach it because I had nothing to attach it with, but I put it on the tombstone, and that's where it's set for, I don't know how long, because it's been long gone since then. Because hell, that was 30 years ago, probably, when I did that. So, because I'm old. So
now, how far are you from Dayton?
Depending on what part of Dayton, about 30 minutes.
Okay, because one of our very first investigations was at the Amber Rose restaurant in Dayton, and so I knew you was kind of somewhat in that area.
Yeah, yep, yeah. Because I think we meet at Stebbins Con, I believe.
Stebbins Con.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure it was Stebbins Con, but yeah. Well, you know what the worst part about is I was getting ready to invite you back to our show in Pickle again, and then all this shit fell apart, so we didn't have it.
And we had furniture at your show. It was a lot of fun. Met some cool people. So if you ever get back into it, please send the invite. We'd be honored. Planning
next year. It's planned. It is so far planned. This is how close it was last year. I got the confirmation on the venue on Friday. We were talking to some other people. We were going to announce everything on Monday. Everything got shut down on Sunday. That's when everything got shut down on COVID. So it was like, guys are killing me. So, and then we were going to do it this year, but we were watching the schedule fill up, and everybody's trying to pack as many conventions into the last 6 months of the year that there's literally like no weekends available. So we're like, next year. We're doing it next year. But we did an episode a while back. Tina and I did one. It was for Halloween. It was the true tales on Halloween. Some of the stories that we, stuff that we've talked about, our adventures into going and ghost hunting, and some of the stuff that I've dealt with personally. I worked at a hotel years ago, and a guy was literally killed there. And this happened the beginning of October, and we had people calling every day, several times a day, trying to book that room for Halloween, just so they could be in that room where the guy died, except for he didn't die in that room. So they could go in there and do a seance or something like that. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I kept telling my boss, I was like, man, we should quadruple that room price so that we can fix parts of the hotel.
Especially around Halloween, you'd get everybody wanting to sit there and rent it out.
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. And the worst part about it, though, it wasn't even opened up by the police yet for Halloween. So there's no way we could have rented it anyways. So not like had the big stickers on the door, you see in movies where they got to cut it to get through the
the crime tape.
Yeah, the crime tape. The crime tape was down the seam of the door, so you could not go in there. So
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a experience. I've never been like that. I was there when it happened. I was working. I got home because I worked third shift. I got home. I'm sleeping. My wife comes running upstairs and she goes, why didn't you tell me what happened? I'm like, well, what happened? What happened? They found a body. I'm like, what? They found a body at your work. I'm like, oh, okay. And like, she goes, my dad called me and told me, and there's like, she goes, I knew nothing would happen with Paul because they said he had boots on. I know Paul does not wear boots. And but no, it was from what I understand, it was a drug deal gone bad. Guy was beaten real bad, and they dragged him outside and threw him outside, thinking he was just gonna wake up and go home, and he never did. They just, and that's where the guy died, right there on the property while I was working.
Well,
Never
there you go. You could have sat there and charged people to hang out around the property.
Oh,
Solicit.
Yeah. So, yeah. You want to come see where the guy died? No.
Right there at that bush.
Yes. But it's just, now, I've that's like the weirdest like horror story event has ever really happened to me. But we did go, like I said, ghost hunt. We went all over. I got the we were doing the Crybaby Bridge and the cops showed up. We're sitting there and I come out from underneath the bridge and I got the camera in my hand. I'm like, this is a video camera. I'm putting it down now. I'm like, I don't want to get shot. And the cop's like, yeah, okay. He goes, what you guys out here doing? And I'm like, we're ghost hunting. And then it's a sheriff. And he goes, you find anything? I went, well, that's why we're back again tonight. But yes. And he's like, neat. And he's like, now you guys need to get out of here. He goes, I was like, yeah, okay. I was like, I don't know why, because it wasn't private property or nothing, but we were reported because they saw our lights while people were going over the bridge. So people called the sheriff on us. So,
well, they probably figured that, there was going to be a lot more people that would end up calling by the end of the night. And if they have to go check it out every time someone calls, that it would just become more of a pain. So that's probably why they told you to move along, because we've noticed, and the one theme with our group is that we're completely against trespassing, as much as, a lot of these people do it. We just choose not to, especially since the paranormal is one of those things to where you talk to a lot of people, they're going to think you're plumb crazy anyways. And so if you at least try to do it professionally, then that's the route to go. But we've noticed though, over the years, that a lot of times the police are very, very interested in what we do. And, they make it known too, because we were on our way to an investigation up in Madison, Ohio. And I was going through a little village and I didn't realize that the speed limit had dropped from like 55 down to 25. And I'm just rolling along, and next thing I know, a cop's pulling me over and he's asking, where we were going. We were in such a hurry. And I explained to him, I said, listen, I'm not from around here. I said, you can look at my GPS system here. It still says that it's 55 miles an hour. And I said, I was just trying to go by the speed limit. And he was like, no, once you got into the village, it dropped down to 25. He goes, where are you guys going anyways? And I explained to him that we were doing an investigation, and we were just on our way up to Madison. So he took my information, went back to his car, and a few minutes later he came back and he's like, I'm letting you off with a warning. He goes, but you need to slow it down. He goes, because if you have an accident, you're not going to be able to sit there and investigate any ghost and stuff like that. So he was really cool about it and let us go. And then we did a cemetery not far from here that we had gotten permission to be at. And we were going to investigate during the day and then leave once, closing time came around. And right before we were getting ready to pack things up and leave, we had an officer show up, and we explained to him that we were packing up and we were getting ready to leave. And he said, well, I actually was told that you guys were going to be out here. He goes, this is my route tonight. And he goes, I wanted to come by and meet you guys and see what you were up to. And he goes, stay as long as you want. He goes, as long as you're not doing nothing, he goes, I'm not worried about it if you're here past hours. So they've usually been pretty cool.
Yes, yeah, I've never had any problem with it. It was just that one moment where you're just like, you're like, okay, I gotta explain to a cop while I'm out here in the middle of nowhere doing this. And I never, like the cemetery we did, it was dusk till dawn, or dusk, it was closed dusk to dawn. So we got there late. We got to the very edge where you could legally go, and we filmed what we could. We're just like, okay, this is the cemetery we hope to come back to, blah blah blah. And we took pictures and stuff like that. And that's one of the ones we got a weird shadow, but I kind of think I explained that one away by just, but we had no problem there. We had no problem anywhere else. It was just the one time with the one cop, and he thought it was funny, and he's just like, yeah, cool, whatever. um, you know, um, have you ever, I always ask this because I'm, have you ever been to the point where you're investigating and you just feel like there's something there, but you never get anything on film? You don't get nothing on it. You just feel like somebody's right behind you the entire time, or something like that.
I mean, there's been a lot of places that we've went to that we've had, personal experiences, feelings, and oh, my wife is chiming in about which one, the Majestic Theater down in Chillicothe. We never actually really got any evidence from this location, but I'm a spiritual medium, and so if I go to a location and if a spirit wants to make contact with me, I can usually pick up on them. We went to the Majestic Theater, and as soon as we walked in, I had the craziest sensation of just being bombarded by different spirits and stuff like that was wanting to communicate, and it was so mind-boggling for me. It was like, it was just, to me, it sounded like hundreds of voices just in my ears, just trying to, and you couldn't make out what they were saying, but you can sense it. And that was one of the locations that I had one of my personal experiences with. And even though we're being told not to, I can't even explain exactly the sensations that we were getting, but there was one particular area, and it was like a boiler room, which is naturally creepy anyways. And I had walked into this room, and as soon as I walked into it, I had this just real negative feeling that came over me, and I couldn't explain it. And I walked out of the room. As soon as I walked out of this room, I felt fine. I felt, back to normal. And I walked back into the room. And when I walked back into the room, I started feeling that negative energy again that just was kind of overwhelming. And after a couple minutes of being in there with this feeling, I knew I had to get out. Well, as soon as I walked out of the door, I felt something scratch me across my face, and B and another investigator was outside, and I had explained to them what I had felt, and they could literally see a welt raised underneath my eye to where something had scratched me. And my first thing was, it was a dark room. I wanted to see if there was anything maybe hanging from the ceiling that I didn't see, maybe an old wire that just, I happened to run into and not even realize it. But upon looking it over, I couldn't find anything that would have caused that to happen. And I never went back in that particular room. But later on in the investigation, there we had noticed up on one of the other floors that there was a hole in the wall, and it was just big enough for someone to fit through if they wanted to. So me being, I don't know if you'd say courageous or stupid, I decided I wanted to go through this hole in the wall and see what was on the other side. Well, when I did, I was in a room that had no windows, it had no doors, and there was just a bunch of bricks and debris laying on the floor. And on the one wall, there was a painting. It used to be a Masonic opera house. The Freemasons used to be involved with it. And I had seen this painting on the wall. It was just a giant figure of, I guess, one of the Freemasons or something. Well, as soon as I had got over into that room for a minute or so, B was on the other side of the wall, and she's like, "John, you have to get out of there now." She goes, "You've got to get out of there now." And so I climbed back through the wall, and as soon as I did, B just hightailed it. I mean, she just ran down the steps, and she was done investigating for the night. And whatever it was scared her so bad, she actually walked away from the group itself for a year and a half before ever coming back to investigate. And she wouldn't talk about what actually happened until several months later. And she had told me that when I went into that room, she felt the sensation of what, the best way she described it was like a parent that would kind of grab their kid by the back of the neck to try to get them to move along if they were,
poking,
taking their time in the store or whatever, and they're trying, "Come on, let's move along." And she felt that pressure on the back of her neck, and she had felt a breath in her ear. And there was another investigator there with her, but she was standing on the other side of her, and it wouldn't, that wouldn't have caused it. And our only thought on that was that if you know anything about the Freemasons and stuff, some of their lodges and meeting areas, there was places where women were not allowed to be. And we think that might have been one of those particular areas. And I had stumbled across it.
Yeah, I know they got a lot of secret passageways in some of their buildings. So,
yeah, it was
definitely. Yeah, like I said, I know, because I have a couple friends that are Masons, and they tell me about their building, and they're like, "Yeah, you would never know it." He goes, "But there's literally, you walk into this hallway, and there looks like there's just a door at the beginning and door at the end." He goes, "You don't see the doors on the side." He goes, "They're there. You have to know where they are to open them." So, I mean, I know as bad as I think Freemason buildings are kind of creepy anyways, just because of stuff like that. All the secret stuff hidden about is almost off-putting by themselves. So,
well, see, in that particular theater, which we were very, very blessed to have been able to investigate a couple of times, they no longer allow people, I think it's new management or something, but they no longer allow people to go in there and investigate. And I think we were one of the only groups that ever actually got to go in there to investigate. But the theater dates from way, way back. It used to be vaudeville. I think Laurel and Hardy used to be there. Just a bunch of different people. And it became the Masonic Opera House. And then back in, I'm wanting to say it was the 1918, I think there was a big influenza outbreak in that part of Ohio. Well, I think it was all over the country, but really affected that part of Ohio. And there was so many people that were dying that the town of Chillicothe, their morgue could not actually handle all the bodies that were coming in from this outbreak. And so they actually brought them over to the Masonic Opera House, and they used the Opera House for a period of time as a makeshift morgue. and it was confirmed that they used to stack the bodies in the dressing rooms like wood, and then they would actually bring them out one at a time or a couple at a time, and they would bring them out on the stage, and that's where they would do all their procedures. And there was no room to drain all the blood, so they actually used to drain it out into the back into the alleyway, and they had nicknamed it Blood Alley. But everything that was talked about was actually confirmed. And so it definitely had a kind of a dark history about it.
That's really cool. Now, when you go in to do your investigations, there's, I don't know where you stand on this piece of technology, the scanner one, where it scans through the radio signals to hear,
Mm-hmm.
to hear where I'm not one that thinks that works. I don't know where you stand on it, because it's picking up signals, so you're going to get choppy bits of signals anyways. So you're going to get words, you're going to get, I don't know.
Well,
It's one of the ones that I think people, I don't know where you, like I said, where you stand on it. It's where I think people want it to work, so they hear what they want to hear on that one. Does that make sense?
that makes perfect sense. We've dabbled with them a little bit, but like you had said, it's scanning literally through hundreds of just stations, just over and over and over and over again. And like you said, you're picking up little pieces of words. Very seldom have we ever actually heard full words. Um, and then, like you said, people are wanting to hear something, and so they could hear just a little blurb of something, and they're like, "Oh, did it say the name Kyle or this and that?" So it's a guessing game of what it's actually saying, if it is saying anything, because it could just be so choppy that it sounds like something. And if you're a newbie and stuff, and you're filled with excitement, and just the sheer energy of being at a location, your mind's going to play tricks on you. So I'm not a firm believer on it. I'm not a firm believer on a lot of this stuff. uh, like you said, the EMF detector. A lot of people are like, that that picks up spirits, that picks up spirits. Yes and no. One thing that we do is we use most of our equipment for the scientific aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to find out if there's bad wiring, like you said, if there's anything that's going to be causing, the fluctuation. And one of the things that we had realized is that cell phones actually will cause them to go ahead and spike, some more than others. And so that's why we've always told people, when we're investigating, don't have your cell phones on. Put them in airplane mode, because it actually does not pick it up when it's in airplane mode. Um, but we do that to try to use this equipment for the scientific purposes. And if we've tried to find wiring, if we've tried to find something, and we're still getting spikes in certain areas, it could be paranormal. We don't know. One of the other pieces of equipment that we use is a digital carbon monoxide detector, and that actually helped us at a location that we did. We actually got a call or a message from a woman's daughter that said that her mom was experiencing a lot of things in her house, and she didn't know if we'd be able to come out and check it out for her. Well, private home investigations, we usually don't travel that far. Sandusky's a few hours from us, but we were like, you know what? They sound legit. They sound like that they're in need. So let's go out there, see what's going on. And the carbon dioxide monoxide detector, actually determined that she did have a carbon monoxide leak in her house, and it was strong enough to where it was spiking on the meter. And so we told her, we said, you've got to go ahead and get this fixed. So if anything, we're helping possibly save lives. I mean, even if it's faulty wiring, because faulty wiring can cause fires and a whole bunch of other stuff. And people that contact us just don't even think about stuff like that. And they don't realize that faulty wiring, gas leaks will cause you to have some of the sensations of, like you said earlier, paranoia. You feel like you're being watched. If there's a lot of electricity, you're going to feel literally the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, from the energy. And but she was a cute lady, and it was kind of one of our funnier investigations, because she had all this stuff going on, and she goes, I'm sitting in my chair, and she goes, I get this weirdest smell from sitting in this chair. She goes, it just smells rotten, and I don't know what's causing it. She goes, it smells rotten. So, we're searching it for her. She was just a little old lady, and we lifted one of the cushions and found a clove of garlic that had rotted, and she had actually put it under there because she thought she was having some type of evil spirits, and she thought that putting the garlic in the chair would actually ward them away from her. And so we found this funky piece of garlic that had been there for God knows how long, and she had a back massager. And for anybody watching this, it literally was a back massager. It wasn't those ones you find in the adult stores.
Yeah,
massage.
It was a back massager, not a back massager.
Yeah, but she goes, it stopped working. She goes, I don't know what's causing it. She goes, it stopped working. And we looked, and she had the batteries in backwards. So, it was just, little things like that. But, it's been interesting, to say the least.
I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I've grown, like I said, I've grown up in this little town, and there's so many stories about this little town. When I grew up, my one of my best friends lived like a block and a half, maybe not even a block, like a half a block away from this one house here in town. This house has like so many stories about it. And literally the house, people would move in, start working on it, stuff would start happening, they would move out. People would contractors would go in, start doing work, tools would come up missing, power wouldn't work, stuff like that. And Halloween time, the owner, whoever had owned the house at the time, would park and just wait and just park there and run everybody off so nobody would go there on Halloween. So like I said, it's one of them stories you get. Everybody's got a new story about it. Everybody's got it. Oh, I went there and you could see a person moving around inside this empty house. So me and my wife and some friends of ours went up there, and our one friend went up there, and he's looking in the windows, and pretty soon he jumps up and he runs, just flat runs back to the car, leaps past me into the back seat. He goes, there's somebody in there. And I'm like, what? Okay, wait a minute. I go in, I get my trunk, I get my big flashlight out, I go up there and I start looking in the window, and all of a sudden my light hits another light, and I see something moving. I'm like, what the? And I realize that the way the door was looking, there was a mirror in a room, so he was catching himself looking back at himself. And it scared him so bad he runs clear back to the car. I've never had any issues at this house. Never heard anything happen there for me, nothing. But I knew a friend that was a contractor, and he was in there doing work, and he goes, you'd be sitting there cutting and your saw would go dead. He goes, you'd have rechargeable batteries. You just take them off the charger. You'd get like 2 or 3 things dead. And he goes, we couldn't work. He goes, you legitimately could not work in his house.
But it's funny you were talking about that house close to you, because there's actually one in Cleveland that's very, very popular, Franklin Castle.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of
And there's confirmed history of a German Socialist Party. Um, I think that during Prohibition, they used that house to move um, alcohol around. There's tunnels underneath, and that's another location that the same thing happens. People purchase the home, um, try to fix it up. As soon as they start doing any type of remodeling, something happens and they can't finish the job. And like you had said, they move out. Another person comes in, tries it, does the same thing. And I remember several years ago, there was actually a couple of homeless people that had broken in there, and they had started a fire in the basement of the house to, I guess, stay warm. Well, it got out of control, and for whatever reason, they couldn't get out of the house. They were actually rescued by the fire department, but you would think that if there was a fire that got out of control and you found your way into the house, you'd be able to find your way out. But for whatever reason, they had to be rescued. And to this day, I think it's owned by somebody. I think they were going to try to do some type of dinner club, but I do firmly believe that certain spirits look at structures as their home, even though they might have been passed on now for 60, 70 years. And whenever someone comes in to start doing reconstructing and try to redecorate the place, I think that they do have the ability to go ahead and kind of throw a monkey wrench into it and stop, from doing something that they weren't going to approve of.
Now, in your travels and stuff, you said you've been to England and stuff. Have you ever gone to a place and you walked in and you're just like, nope, no, it hits you like a wall as soon as you like try to get near it? My wife feels that way. There's certain places she just will not go. She just it hits her like a brick wall.
B, you can't think. I'm trying to think, and there's nothing that's actually been to the place. Well, I would probably say if there was a location that I've been to that kind of really messed with me, um, I would say Madison Seminary. Um, that place, I can't even explain it, but it had some different uses for it over the years. It used to be a mental hospital. It was once a kind of like a halfway house for women prisoners from Marysville. It used to be a place where there was wives and children uh, lived at that lost their husbands during the wars back in the day. Uh, it was just multiple things. And there was one particular room that I had walked into, and I can't remember if it was confirmed before or after what it was, but I had walked into a room and there was someone else there that was investigating with us. And I had never met this guy until that night. And so I didn't know him from Adam and Eve. And he was this gigantic guy, a lot bigger than me. And I'm only 5'5". So, he towered over me. And for whatever reason, I was feeling like someone was wanting to communicate through me. And I had I had said some stuff to this guy that I'm surprised he didn't kick my ass. My wife actually has the audio from that night, and whatever it was took over my body, and I did not have any control over it. I could not control it. I just started, it's almost like you blacked out. I blacked out, didn't know what was going on. And they got me out of that room. And next thing I know, one of the other guys that was there was actually an ordained minister, and they were praying over me and everything else. I do not know what it was. The particular room, though, I guess used to belong to um, a child molester, and I think that they kept him in that room because staff would be able to keep an eye on him closer. Uh, but that was one time that I can honestly say I was scared, because I wasn't in control of the situation. And to this day, I still will not listen to that audio from that night.
Wow, that's crazy. Now going the other way, have you ever gone to a place and that you've seen, or you've talked to people and go, well, okay, that's haunted on TV? You get there and there's just nothing. You just absolutely nothing.
Man, I don't even know where to start with that one. I mean, there once again, Hollywood has made everything out to be super haunted. We've went to plenty of places and have gotten no activity. The Madison Seminary that I was talking about, we've went back there on several occasions that we got absolutely nothing. I've left my skepticism open up, because so many people now are trying to jump on this bandwagon to where, come to my house, it's haunted, it's this and that, and people are literally charging big bucks to go to places that really have no known activity. So, but there's been so many stories that's been passed around about a place because it looks creepy or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But we've had several places that we've went to and just got absolutely nothing, and thought it was a complete waste of time, and a lot of times money.
Yeah. Vince, really? Turn it down. It's loud. No, turn it down. Seriously, Vince, you're usually really good. He usually just sits back there and doesn't do nothing during interviews, but now he's just going to be loud and obnoxious. No. I know the dog won't leave me alone either. Now, I always ask that, because I know some people who've gone ghost hunting and stuff like that over the years, and they've gone to, I've had people that gone to Mansfield and they say, oh, it's the most terrifying thing I've ever had to deal with. He goes, I saw shadows moving the entire time. Then I talked to other people and they're like, I was bored. I felt like I was going to fall asleep the entire time. Nothing was happening. He goes, everybody's got their camcorder. Everybody's got their, their tape recorder. He says, we got nothing. And it's like, but then there's the ones, like I said, you're going in, some people think you're not going to find anything, so they don't get anything. And people who want to see everything, so they get everything. Like I said, I've known people who they swear everything's haunted, because they're like, oh, I know this is what it is. And I'm like, okay. If you feel that way, that's your feelings. I'm not going to tell you it's not, but I've never experienced anything. I don't know anybody who else has. My wife still swears our old house here in town is haunted, and the people that live in it now swear it's haunted. I've never experienced anything in there to say it was ever haunted. But then again, I'm the skeptic. So our dogs just acted weird, or our cats just acted weird, but our dogs and cats always act weird. So, yeah.
Well, see, and I think that's one of the things with us is when we go into, well, at least me personally, when I go into a location, I know what I'm going there to do. I'm going there to investigate, but I'm not going in there with the mindset that it's super haunted. It's this and that, because I think once you do, you're setting yourself up for false, false things to happen. I think your mind starts playing with you. One of the places that I can honestly say that I was kind of disappointed with all the hype was there's a place in Illinois called the Watseka Wonder House, and it's also known as the Mary Roth home. And it was the house that the very first case of a possession was ever recorded in the United States. And the Booth brothers actually did a film on it. After we had investigated, we were actually, I do believe, the only team to ever be able to go into the place and investigate, because one of our former members knew the owner personally, and we were able to get in there to do an investigation. And I was expecting it to have all this crazy activity, because if you do a research on this place, I mean, there's just hundreds of sources of different stuff that happened in this home. And we got there and we really didn't get nothing the entire night. The only thing that I do remember from it was whatever was there was messing with the married women. It didn't mess with the men, and it didn't mess with the single women. It only messed with the married women. And whatever it was would tug their hair a little bit, just a little bit, to get their attention. And it was almost like a game to them that, hey, look what I can do. They're married and I'm gonna, mess with them. But other than that, we really didn't get nothing. And I was expecting it to be, off the charts activity the entire night, but we slept there and nothing.
Now, have you ever had it go the other way, where you went to a place and assumed that it was like, oh, there's probably nothing, and then it just,
Once again, B? No. I'm trying to think of a place that I was surprised with the activity. Well, the Majestic Theater was one that I was surprised with the feelings that I had. I would say probably Moundsville Penitentiary in West Virginia. And actually, surprisingly enough, the Mansfield Reformatory was a place that we had been a few times, and we had gotten nothing and just really wasn't having any experiences. And then one night we went there, and it was just completely insane with personal experiences. And when I say personal experiences, it was a personal experience. We didn't capture it on video or anything like that, but other group members had witnessed it. And I remember that we had rented prison out for the night for just our group, and we had some of our friends who was interested in doing this join us on the investigation. And there was a couple of guys that joined us that I had worked with at my place of employment. And I remember we were now, have you been to the Mansfield Reformatory? No. Okay.
I've been past it. That's as close as I've ever been.
Well, they had an area in there. It was like the library, and right off to there, they had it was like a chapel, and we were standing in this chapel, and they were telling everyone to kind of get close, and so we could all hear what the tour guide at the time was saying before he let us go on our own. And he said, I need everyone to get in real close. Well, the two guys that I worked with, the one guy was just goofy, and he put his arm around the other coworker, and he squeezed real tight to him, and he acted. Your son's back there, but he was acting a little.
Yeah.
You get it, and so we were in a particular room, and my wife would take a picture. Well, everything in the picture was clear as day except for this particular individual, and that person was complete out of every picture. Just his face was blurry, but the rest of the picture was clear. And we tried this at different different times. He was in one of the cells, and he was looking through some stuff, and the wife had taken a picture inside there. Once again, the cell was clear. He was all distorted, and we were down in solitary confinement, and I told B to get a picture of me and the two individuals. And so we were standing by each other. Well, the one guy was kind of leaning over, and the other one was standing behind him in a awkward position. She took the picture. All of us were clear as day except for that one individual, and he was completely blurry. Ooh. And later that night, we were told by one of the guides, he goes, I want to try something out. And he goes, I want to see what you come up with. So he said he wanted one of us to walk around the entire cell block in the dark, no flashlights, no nothing, just use your other senses. And I volunteered to do it. And I had walked around the cell block, and there was two cells that I had seen inmates in. I seen them clear as day, and I'm thinking to myself, was my mind playing tricks on me? Was there something that? So I came back from the walk, and that guide actually walked around, and he had done the same thing. And when he came back, he had he had told me about two particular cells, and it happened to be the same cells. Did they have some type of thing going on? I don't know. It was really strange. But later on that night, we were walking on one of the cell blocks, and it was me, my wife, and these two guys that had joined us. And I was up in front, and then the two guys were behind me, and then my wife was in the very back. And as we were walking along, I heard the distinct sound of something running up to me. I mean, I could hear the footsteps running directly up to me, and it scared me so bad I actually jumped back about 2 feet, and whatever it was went past all of us, and my wife actually felt it brush against her shoulder. And a short time later, we heard the distinct sound of a cell door slamming shut, and we tried to find it, and we couldn't find the cell door. So that was one of the places that numerous times we had nothing, and we went in there expecting the same thing, and we were quite surprised.
Cool. No, okay. I know this is going to be the big question here, because this is a very diversive subject, I guess. The Ed and Lorraine Warrens. Okay. I'm a firm believer that Ed was full of shit. Lorraine, I think, was
believed in his shit.
Yeah, she believed in his shit, but I think she was sensitive. But he basically was like, "Yeah, this is it," and she just kind of believed his hype. And because I know some people that the Warrens are the be all end all. They've read like every book that they've ever published on them and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't see it. I think he's a con man and she fell for his con too. So I don't know. So
Well, the fact that you don't believe in them and stuff like that, I think we need to end this now, because they were, if they said it happened, it happened. I mean, it's the bottom line. I mean, they were okay. Now I'm getting a chuckle out of the wife, because she knows that. No, they were both, personally, I think, was full of shit. And like you said, I think that Ed was onto something, and Lorraine just kind of fell into it, like, hey, this is, um we used to have a radio show, that we used to do, and one of our guests was Andrea Perone, and she actually was one of the children at the time that the movie The Conjuring was based on. She actually lived in that home, and she pretty much told the whole scoop of what had happened. And she did say that there was activity in the home and stuff like that, but she herself pretty much confirmed the beliefs that the Warrens were full of shit. And it's, scenes, they have a haunted museum that have 1,000,000,001 artifacts that's haunted, and then you've got Zach that's doing it now from Ghost Adventures, and he's got his little museum, and it's like, really, you're thinking that this, I'm sorry, if you've got a room with 100 different artifacts that is haunted, why isn't there more hype about these locations, and why aren't you charging people to investigate these locations?
oh yeah, I've told my son, I was like, the one thing I'd love to do in my lifetime is figure out a way to get into the Warrens museum and like just turn everything slightly sideways and then escape back out. So then they come in the next day. Don't take nothing. Just move everything slightly to the left or the right.
Turn the Annabelle upside down.
Yeah, just so it's cross-legged, like leaning instead of like just sitting there like this.
Have a little cigarette in her hand.
Oh, and it's funny because I got geez, I can't remember how many years ago this was. I was in Pittsburgh and I was hanging out with some friends over there for Pittsburgh Comic-Con, and Steve Gonzalez from Ghost Hunters was on there, and he was just there, and he was just wandering around because no one was asking for his signatures or nothing like that. So he's literally just talking to everybody. And I had to talk to him. So I'm just standing there talking to him for like 20 minutes, just standing on the floor. And I'm like, I was like, and he's like, it's TV. I'm just going to say it's TV. And but I'm not gonna lie. He goes, I'm scared to death of heights. I'm scared to death of this. I'm scared to death of that. He goes, that's real. I don't like flying. He goes, I travel by car or bus pretty much everywhere I go. And I'm like, holy crap. But that was also when they were all having their big falling out too. So that was kind of funny getting they were all fighting amongst each other. So you're like, okay, so you're telling me this shit because you're feuding or because you're actually wanting to tell us what's actually happening. But yeah, he's like,
well, and it's crazy that you said that, because there was a thing that we used to do here in our area called Con on the Cob or something like that, or whatever it was, but it had a bunch of vendors and stuff like that, and we would go there, once, twice a year. They would have them, and one of the years we were there, Steve was actually walking around. He just happened to be in the area, and he was with his buddy, and he walked by our table and he seen World Paranormal Investigations, and he just he kind of came across as an asshole to us. And I don't know if it's one of those things that he might have thought in his mind, you knew in his mind that everything that they're doing was TV, and there's this group here that's promoting themselves as paranormal investigators and this and that. And he probably thought that we were one of these con jobs that are out there saying everything's haunted and all this other stuff. And I got up, you know, once he walked by, I got up and I went and I introduced myself to him and stuff like that. And I was just trying to make small talk with him to let him know that, hey, you know, we're not out there for the popularity or the, you know, the monetary. And you know, it was weird seeing him there, and I don't know why he was in Akron, Ohio, but he was, and he was passing through. But you know, we've been asked to do several TV shows, and I don't know if you remember, but Zach actually had his own TV show for one season. It was called Paranormal Challenge. And it was where they had different groups go to different haunted locations, and they would both investigate this area, and whatever teams ended up with the best evidence, kind of getting rights or whatever, you know, for doing the show. And we were like one of the first teams that they actually contacted and wanted us to be on the show. And it got down to signing contracts, and I had made it perfectly clear to his people that we would do the show, but we would not falsify evidence, and we would not fabricate stories for the sake of entertainment. And to this day, I'm still adamant about it. It's just not who we are. You know, we want WPI to go down as being a legit group that, you know, tries to find the answers instead of trying to, you know, make a mountain out of a molehill. And as soon as I told them that we weren't going to do that type of stuff, they lost interest. Just like that, they were done. And then we were contacted by the people from the Haunted Collector, and they were interested in us because we had done an investigation at a particular place, the Emmett House down in Waverly, Ohio, and it has since burned to the ground. But the owners of the Emmett House had actually told the people from the Haunted Collector about us and said that we had came out and we had investigated and we had some activity while we were there, which we did. Nothing really stood out. I mean, there was a couple things that happened that we couldn't explain, but nothing major. And so someone from the Haunted Collector contacted us and was asking me about some of the stuff that we had going on. And they're like, what can you tell us about the haunted oil cans? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, haunted oil cans? And they're like, down in the basement, there are haunted oil cans. What can you tell us about them? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I have no idea about that. Never even seen any oil cans. And once again, they lost interest in what we had to say and they moved on. But the whole time, all I could think about with haunted oil cans was Steve Martin in The Jerk, when he was being shot at by the sniper and it was hitting the oil cans that was stacked next to him. And he's like, these oil cans are mad at me. But you know, but it's Hollywood. My Ghost Story is another one that reached out to us about a location that we had investigated um, that we did capture evidence, and it's on our website too, of the stuff that we had captured. And I guess it wasn't enough for a TV show. So when they contacted us, they were interested in the pictures, but then they were like, well, what can you tell us about the huge battle between the two Indian tribes that took place there? I'm like, there was no battles that took place between Indian tribes. Well, are you sure there was? No, there wasn't. That wasn't what that place was. And once again, they lost interest, but we're okay with it.
That's like oh man, I can't remember what the name of the show is. But it's the one with the psychic and then like the private investigator.
Oh,
It's why am I drawing a blank?
the guys from New York. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were doing a investigation in Springfield, and they were talking about like all this stuff happened in Springfield, and I'm like, no, that didn't. That happened about it happened in Ohio, but they were talking about stuff that happened as close as to where I live in Piqua. They were talking about the one massacre, and yes, that is, I guess, near Springfield, but it would be like saying, okay, there's a haunted house in Dayton, so the guy in Vandalia could be, there was a murder in Vandalia that affected this house in Dayton. And I'm just watching this, I'm like, dude, because there's people, and it's funny because we're watching this, and I had other people that I knew watching, they're like, dude, that's not even close. That's like, I mean, if he drove 20 minutes, he could get there, and that's where that happened. But it's literally the episode, and I get that I used to watch a lot of those shows a lot more. Now I kind of watch them to kind of pick them apart because it was fun to watch. Now it's just kind of, now we have the ongoing joke of, if you ever watch anything with Zach Baggins, he's got to pose and flex to look at his watch or to hold an EMF meter. Like, I'm like, dude, you look like you should be in Nickelback. Come on, shut up.
And that's the thing. Hollywood has really honestly destroyed what this was supposed to be about. And I like to tell people that we actually started investigating before it became cool. We were doing it before Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters was on TV. Yeah, they might have been doing their own theme, but no one heard of them because it was on such a small level. And but we started doing it, like I said, back in July of 2004, and it's just been so hyped up. And I've got to commend one of the former owners of the Madison Seminary, because the Haunted Collector show wanted to come out there and do an episode out there. Well, if you've seen anything about the Haunted Collector, they basically, this guy goes into a location and he finds a piece of something somewhere in the structure that is causing the hauntings, and he removes them from the house or from the location, and things all go back to normal. And so we were actually talking to one of the previous owners of the Madison Seminary, and she had talked to us about the show when they came out, and she goes, I told him, I never experienced anything out of the ordinary here. She goes, I'm here in the office doing work all the time. She goes, I've never really noticed anything that I would classify as paranormal. And her son, who would always be kind of the guy on site when we were there investigating, he always told us nothing. He goes, maybe it's just that I'm so used to used to everything that I don't notice any activity. He goes, but I'm here all hours of the night. And he goes, I've never experienced nothing. Well, the TV show came out and the mom stuck to her guns. You know, she told them on the show that she didn't experience anything. Then the son, in that short period of time from the last time we had investigated to the time they filmed this show, had 1,000,000,001 experiences. I mean, crazy experiences. And my head wanted to explode. And right there, really, to a certain extent, killed the credibility of that location, because you've seen firsthand how people can be, I guess you can say, bought. And even though we've had experiences in this location, anything that would come out of his mouth, I would disregard it. So it's really sad.
Now, I remember you did the radio show, and because I've listened to it a few times, I found some of it online that you had. Who was some of your favorite guests that you've had on there?
Oh man, we've had a lot of great guests over the years. We actually, when we started the radio show, we started with just the paranormal. It was just about people within the paranormal and stuff like that. Well, we realized that there was only so much we could talk to, people out there that we could reach out to with the paranormal. So we had kind of branched off, and we had some other really great guests. Some people that come to mind is we had Sean Whalen on from The People Under the Stairs, and he was in Twister, and he was in some other movies. And then we've had different musicians on. We've had actors, actresses, you name it. Probably one of the coolest guests that we had on was for adult film actress Seika, Dorothea Patton. She was a blast. She was probably the greatest guest we had. And knowing her former employment, I had told everybody that was going to call in, I said, I go, whatever you do, keep it clean. Keep it clean. She is, she's a person, she was doing this stuff as a job. So just keep it clean. And she just let it go south real quick.
So I met her 20 years ago in Motor City Con, and she just laughing and telling stories, and she did not care about anything. Is literally, I had a friend that was set up maybe not quite catty corner from her, but we're just sitting there and we're talking back and forth to her, and she just doesn't care. She's just letting everything go.
Well, and that was the thing, because I was like, okay, how can we keep this professional and clean for an hour and a half, what time? And I had talked to her because she's a huge baseball fan, and she was a White Sox fan. I think whoever plays at Wrigley Field. And we were talking about it, and I was like, I know you're a big baseball fan and this and that, and my wife, one of her dreams to actually go to a game at Wrigley Field and see, a game at Wrigley Field. And so that might be something, in the future I'm going to have to do for her. And she just without even thinking, she goes, you're going to get the best ever. And I'm like, my God. And she put me in a position to where I didn't even know. In fact, I'm like, okay, but she was definitely fun. A lot of laughs. Um, we've had people on that we've gotten to have long relationships with, as far as friendships, which was really cool. One of our favorite guests, who's a near and dear friend of ours, is Mel Novak.
Oh yeah.
He was down at the dreaded, dreaded Epicon of Dayton. And that's where we first met him. And he's been really, really great to us ever since. We've talked periodically. He'll call us on the phone and we'll chat. But just the history that he had in movies. He was in Game of Death with Bruce Lee. He was in Bruce Lee's last movie before his death. It just that he had fought Chuck Norris in An Eye for an Eye. And he's also a minister as well, and he goes to some of the hardest prisons in California, and he does his preaching and stuff like that. But he's just one hell of a guy, and he's probably one of our greatest guests we've had.
Cool. You know what's funny about EpicCon though? I was supposed to have been there, and I had people that were setting up, and they're like, "Don't come." They're like, "You haven't made it yet." They're like, "Are you here?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Don't." He goes, "We don't even know where our tables are yet." And I'm like, "You're supposed to load in." I was like, I told her I wasn't gonna be able to load in till like after I closed the shop, and she knew this. And he's like, "Yeah, don't." So finally I was like, "Yeah." I called her up. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to make it." So I was supposed to have been there, but I was able to get out of it. And the worst part about it, I felt bad because I sent people there who bought tickets, and then they're like, they come to me because they bought tickets because of me, and I'm like, "I'm sorry."
We didn't actually, because we weren't selling anything, and we weren't making any money off of it. It was just us promoting WPI, and so we got our table for free, so we weren't really out of anything. We paid for our own hotel room and the whole 9 yards, so we weren't expecting to get anything out of it to begin with. But we had a lot of friends that showed up that were expecting to get paid, were planning on getting paid, and let's just say things went real south. And by the end of the weekend, we had people literally grabbing money out of the cash drawer that for people coming and paying to get into the convention, grabbing whatever money they could and say, "Give me my money," yada yada yada. But that was just, I felt bad for so many people that kind of got burned on that whole situation.
Oh yeah, it's a friend of mine went because they wanted to meet Lori Petty, and they told me the horror story that Lori Petty's like a hardcore, I think, vegan. It's not even vegetarian. And they go there and they're like, "Oh, there's food in there," and there's literally like a meat tray. And they like her fans went and got her dinner on their own dollar and brought it back for her because they didn't bring her food. I heard that the guys that were from Christine, they were supposed to be there with the car. When they got there, they found out that there was no money. So basically, I guess a convention up in Michigan was like, "Come on up." So they just hopped, all of them got together and went on up there and did a convention up there instead of this one. And the
Well, I
worst thing
know.
about it is, from what I understand, that's still not the worst convention. There was one that bombed worse than that one.
Oh my God.
And that one had like Stan Lee at it. And that, yeah, you can look at, I can't remember who told me about it, but it's just, I think you can look up like bombed, hugely bombed convention. And they had like big name people. And it like went south. Like, I think they had like 153 people through the door or something like that. It was ridiculously bad.
Well, I think with Epicon, I think it had potential. I do believe it had potential. I think that there was some people um, whispering in the ear of the promoter saying, "Hey, let's do this way. Let's do this way." Um, and it just completely bombed. I think she was pretty new at it, and
Well,
she was trying to take helpful advice from people that really shouldn't have been given advice to begin with.
well, from what I understand is she did it was the second one. So the first year did pretty good, but it was small. That would have been like me doing my little show and then just going, okay, we did okay the first year, so we're going huge the next year. And
That's
I mean,
exactly what
literally,
happened.
I've done 8 of them. I think it's this upcoming will be our 8th. And I'm just now talking to larger guests. I'm like, you know, I'll get like one bigger guest. And then I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I cross market one guest? So I've actually talked to Sergeant Slaughter. And I'm like, okay, if we get he brings in the wrestling people, he brings in the toy people because of GI Joe, and he can bring in the comic book people because of the comic books. And I'm like, okay, so we got a guy who can embrace 3 things at once. Therefore, we can market him better across the wider spectrum, you know. And I do think that people can get that way too big. They try way too hard and think that they're bigger than they actually are, and then it just blows up. So
Well, and I think that's what had happened at Epicon because Jake the Snake was there, um, Diamond Dallas Page was there. Uh, Someone had reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to donate $7,000 in order to get Ric Flair to show up. And I was not going to sit there and take any type of risk. But that's what happened with that convention. It was, I think they would have been better off getting some of the smaller celebrities, people like Mel Novak, who, you know, had his time back in the day. I mean, he's still making movies, but nothing of the magnitude that he did back in his prime. But and Laureen Landon, who was there from Airplane 2,
yeah,
in some other movies. You can get people like that for pretty, reasonable price, and like you said, get one guest, one bigger guest or something, or even two, maybe one wrestler and maybe one bigger actor. That way you're drawing, like you said, people from all different types of themes, and it just whoever was talking to her was like, "Hey, let's go big, let's go big. This is how you're going to make it," and the money just wasn't there.
yeah. I mean, I don't have anything personally wrong with her. I mean, she's a nice lady, but yeah, you're right. I think it was just a lot of bad advice going through that whole thing. So
Like, have you did you ever, now this was down in Kentucky, did you ever make it to any of the Dead Winners?
no.
They had two Dead Winter conventions, and I tell you what, those were probably the best convention that we had been a part of that didn't have a huge backing like Horror Hound and some of the bigger ones, Scarefest down in Kentucky. This was kind of a husband and wife had put it together the first year, and then the second year they had it, and I tell you what, it was great, and the way they had done it. The second year was bigger. They had people like Tony Todd and a bunch of other great people. Um, but that was a great convention that was well put together. And I heard that there was some small talk about possibly doing another one. And so if so, we would definitely jump on board, and I'll throw your name in the mix of it, and because I think you do good.
Cool. So, also, before I forget, you are a published author, correct?
Yes, I am.
So, tell us what you've got out, what you've got available.
Well, my very first book that I had done, The Haunting of El Dorado Ridge, is actually a fictional book um, that I had done based loosely on an investigation we did down in Kentucky. And I mean, obviously, because it was a fictional book, I had to throw a bunch of stuff into it. But it was um, it was my first book that came out a few years ago with Fiery Vision Publishing. Um, I have since dabbled in some other type of genres. I myself, even wearing a Harley Davidson shirt, I wrote a romance book, um, and it's called Bourbon Maple Bliss. It was one that really kind of made me kind of go out of my comfort zone, um, because I'm not a sappy romantic guy. I mean, my wife will vouch for that. I am definitely not Mr. Romantic, but I put together a romance book. Um, and then my last full book that I did was Thou Shall Not, which um, I'm surprised I did not have um, the Catholic diocese pounding down my door, because it's kind of a dark thriller about a priest who um, kind of has a dark side to him, and he gets together with one of his students at the school that he is the principal of. Now, for all you viewers out there, the girl is of legal age. This is not some altar boy thing going on here. She was of legal age, and well, it was very dark and kind of twisted. It was my book baby because my sick and twisted mind, I felt most comfortable writing like this. But and I was a part of a book that actually made it on the international bestsellers list. So I am actually an international best-selling author, which I use that lightly because I just happened to to get lucky on that. Um, but I've got a couple other things in the works that I'm hoping to get out pretty soon. It's just with this whole pandemic and stuff, my mind just has not been where it needs to be to write. Um, we've had a lot of personal things go on in the family that just have kind of really brought the whole spirit down. And so I'm hoping maybe over the during the winter in the off season, because right now my wife and I are taking full advantage of any nice days we have here in Ohio, because I don't know about you over there on the western side of the state, but over here we've gotten nothing but rain, rain, and more rain. And so we're trying to get out as much as we can on the motorcycle. So once we put it away for the winter, I'm hoping to jump back into writing.
That's cool. Yeah, I
And
got.
actually, it actually, if I can say one thing that I do think is pretty cool, and I'm honored by this, but another dear friend of ours is actually Victor Miller, who wrote the original Friday the 13th movie. And we met each other. Actually, the first time we met each other was at that Dead Winter horror convention down in Kentucky I was talking about. And we just became really close over that weekend, and we stayed in touch and everything else. And when my wife wrote her one book, he wanted her to send him the script and stuff like that so he can read the book. And then he actually wanted me to send him the finished product with The Haunting of El Dorado Ridge. And when I did, he actually gave a review of the book and allowed me to put it on the back of the book. And so I was honored to have someone with his credibility to sit there and give my book some props. So shout out to
really
Victor
cool.
Miller.
That is too sweet. So, all right, we're closing in on hour and a half plus here.
Wow,
so all right, I gotta admit one thing. I didn't know you did a radio show until I found out you did a radio show with actress Sarah J. And I was like,
oh my God, you
real? And I was like, oh, I gotta listen to this. And I was like, oh. All right, cool.
Well, and the thing was I was like, oh my God, because that was actually one of my toughest interviews that we did with the radio show, because if you listen to it, she was a hard ass.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she was like, it was a completely different twist than what I was expecting, but she she was kind of very opinionated and everything else. So I was kind of like, okay, but that's cool though, that you actually know who Sarah J.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it was one of the ones where it was like, I was like, I looked because I think it was on your Facebook page or something at one time. And I'm like, is that and I like looked it up. I'm like, yes, that is. and she's an Ohio girl too, if I remember right, which is
I think she was born somewhere here in Ohio, but
yeah. But that was funny because it was one of the ones where one of my really good friends at one time, we've just grown apart. So one of them, family moves on. He worked at it was half dance club, so it was half strip club, half porn shop. And so I was his ride all the time. So like if he's running late for work, I'm just literally wandering around, looking at her. And so you're just looking at rows of DVDs and stuff like that and whatnot and toys. And it was one of the ones where I remember seeing the picture and the girl. And then it was like later on I saw that. I'm like, okay. But oh yeah, that was just one of the ones where I was like, is it the same? And it was like, sure, yeah, that is the same girl. Okay, all right.
John's 1-6 son of a bitch. But we tried to, like I said, we tried to open it up. We had a bunch of different people on, and one of the cool things was we were actually supposed to be interviewing Thomas Churchill, who is an indie movie director, stuff like that. And he was actually on the set of a video he was directing for the I don't know if you'd say band or group or whatever, but Twisted, involved with the whole ICP. Yeah. Well, he was actually directing a music video for them when he was supposed to be doing the show. So we're talking to him, and you can hear him, saying stuff in the background to the, the guys. And he's like, hey, he goes, I need to take care of something real quick. He goes, can you say hi to someone for someone? Yeah, yeah. He put Tyler Main on, and I was like, whoa. But Tyler Main was in the video, and so he happened to be on set at the time, and so Thomas had to take care of something, so he threw Tyler on the phone with us. So
Oh, this is one of my story was I was a big fan of the horror, the guy that created Swamp Thing, Bernie Wrightson. Loved his artwork. Years upon years ago, me and my buddy, I think we're at Motor City Con. Bernie's up there signing autographs. He's this little thing in the beginning, and this is back in the early days of cell phones. So it's like the good, not the brick, but like the big size flip phone.
yeah.
And we're sitting there talking to him. We're talking to Bernie, and I'm getting him to sign my copy of like the Creep Show graphic novel, the Cycle of the Werewolf, and some Swamp Things and stuff like that. And he's like on the phone. He goes, "Hold on a second, I got some people want to talk to you." And he hands us the phone. And I pick up the phone. He's like, "Hello," and he goes, "I hear you like my work." And I'm like, "Okay." And it's Stephen King. And I'm like, I'm talking to, I'm like, my buddy's like, I was like, Stephen King. And to this day, almost closing in on 30 years later, me and my buddy still talk about that to this day.
That's awesome.
It's like, you never expect something like that to happen. And, that's like, my kids, my older boys that are moving out, they were big on Robot Chicken when they were kids. And one time we were at a summit. So this wasn't even like a convention. This is a product summit. So they're talking about all the new comic books and video game or movies and board games, stuff like that's coming out. And one of the guys from Robot Chicken was there with Toy Fair because they were connected. And I'm sitting there talking to my kid on the phone. He goes, I was like, "Oh yeah, my kids love Robot Chicken." He goes, "Give me the phone." I'm like, "Okay." And I hand him the phone. He's like, "Do you like Robot Chicken?" He's like, asking my kids this on the phone. And my kids are like, "We talked to the guy from Robot Chicken." And they were little too. They were at their grandparents' house talking to the guys from Robot Chicken. So it was.
Well, and now that's the one good thing that I took away from these conventions that we've done is that, some of the people that you meet are so awesome.
Oh yeah.
And it's, I'm going to admit it's hard at times to go and meet different people and not go all fanboy on them. But it's like, you know what? They're just people too, they just got a different line of work. But I remember, we were at a convention, and actually I think it was Epicon. But Chip Coffey was there, and he's on a lot of these TV shows and stuff, and he's a psychic. But my oldest son, the autistic one, was just absolutely head over heels with him. I mean, he thought he was the coolest guy ever. And we were at this convention, and Chip happened to show up. He wasn't actually one of the guests or anything. He was there showing support for someone else that was there. And someone had kind of brought it up to him that my son was, a huge fan and stuff. And he literally had me get my son on the phone, and he sat there and talked to him for a couple minutes. And that made my son's entire, week or year. And it was, little stuff like that
Oh yeah, means a lot.
I really took away from. But the whole radio show, I love doing it, but it just started becoming such a pain in the ass trying to sit there and schedule people and then have them actually follow through with the schedule. And we've had times where we've had people lined up, and it just fell through because they never called in, or everything else. And we had, I think, probably one of the the drawing points where I was like, you know what, I'm done with this, was we were supposed to have Howard Kalin on, and he was one of the main members from the 60s, 70s band, the Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also a part of Frank Zappa's The Mothers of Invention. And he was supposed to do the show. And, you know, we were talking back and forth. And I was like, all right, you got to call me at 6 p.m. on Saturday night. Call me at 6 p.m. Saturday night. And, you know, we can go ahead and get you on. And he's like, all right, I'll call in, this and that. And we waited and we waited and we waited, never heard from him. And so we had to kind of just wing the whole show. And the next morning, I'm getting a call from Howard, and he was over on the East Coast or West Coast. He was over in Seattle, Washington or something. He thought that he was supposed to call in at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. Oh. I'm like, no, dude, no. Because 6 o'clock over there, I mean, that was like 8 o'clock our time or 9 o'clock our time.
Yeah.
But it was just like little stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. You know, it was fun while it lasted. We had kind of thought about even doing it again. To a certain extent, we actually even had our first guest lined up. We were going to have Rob Afuso, who was the former drummer of the band Skid Row.
Yep.
He was actually going to go ahead and be on the show. We talked a little bit, but it never took off. So,
well, that's one of the things I run into. That's one of the things I run into with this. I mean, literally, if you watch my last episode, I made fun of it. It's because it's called the all filler, no killer episode. It's because literally last Sunday when I was supposed to, I had 3 people lined up. All 3 people had to cancel. And I was like, that's why I had a backup for a backup for a backup. And I was like, so I'm like, okay. And on top of it, I had I screwed my backup last week and I'm still fighting because that hurt. And I was like, all right, man, I was in a bad mood. My back hurt. I dealt with losing 3 people. So I was like, whatever, just taking a day off. So I called my buddy Mark. Told Mark, I was like, all right, you're going to be on the show. We're just going to talk about random shit for an hour. So we just did that for an hour. And I was like, all right, that's why it's like, oh, it's the all filler episode. So it's the all filler, no killer episode.
Yeah. And you know, once you have so many of those episodes, it gets really kind of disheartening to where you're like, oh my God, why am I even trying? But you know, if you ever need a filler, I'm not a killer, but if you ever need a filler, feel free to call on me. You know, we can BS about whatever you want. We can talk about the paranormal. I
think the next time I call him, we'll talk about music because we're both metalheads.
So, we are definitely metalheads. And you know, that's the crazy thing is that you look at my music, you know, list that I have, I go from anything from Air Supply to Slayer. So, I mean, I can talk anything.
2 weeks ago, I went and seen Bret Michaels. Thursday, I went and seen King Crimson. Probably next Wednesday, not this upcoming Wednesday, after next, it looks like we're going to see Alanis Morissette. And then I think at the end of the month, we're going to try to see Alice Cooper again. So
now I've seen Alice Cooper one time, and it was when he was opening for Motley Crue on their last tour that they were supposed to do. And I tell you what, Alice killed it.
Well, we got to go because a friend of mine goes, hey, I can't go. Yeah, I got tickets because at the time we didn't have the money. I was kind of broke. And he goes, hey, I got tickets for Alice Cooper. You want them? I'm like, yeah. So, and the worst part about it is that I think I've seen 3 concerts in like 6 days. So
well, I tell you what, I'm really starting to hate your area though, because it seems like a lot of cool bands are coming to the Rose or something.
The Rose, yeah. That's where I just seen King Crimson.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm seeing all these bands and I'm like, oh my God, they're coming to Ohio. And then I look at the date and they're playing in Huber Heights. I'm like, I don't drive that far for bands.
Well, that's like, we have an ongoing joke that all the good concerts are in Cleveland. And we and I hate Cleveland. I don't know why I hate Cleveland. I just don't like going there. But now everything is there's a place that opened up in Columbus, and it's called like the Ace of Cups. And now they got shows left and right. I just missed Last in Line. I was supposed to go, but a friend had tickets. He had an extra ticket. Then he couldn't end up going, so he ended up selling them to another friend. So it was like, okay, well, you know, but it was one of the ones where it was like last minute, and then literally the day before that, we went and seen Bret Michaels. So it was supposed to be the next day, and I was like, I can't leave the shop 2 days in a row early to go to 2 different concerts.
Now I do have a question, even though you said we'll talk the music down the road. What was the farthest you ever drove for a concert?
The farthest I've ever drove on purpose to go see a show, or the furthest I've ever been to see a show? That's completely different. I've seen Gwar in Atlanta, Georgia, with the they end up being a bigger band, but they were opening up for them. But I was there at Dragon Con, and they were there playing, so I ended up going to go see them while I was at Dragon Con one year. It wasn't meant that I went all the way down there to go see Gwar.
No, how far did you actually go purposely to go see a band?
Cleveland. 3 hours.
So we're about the same, because I actually a few years back I actually drove to the outskirts of Dayton. I can't remember exactly what to go see a show, and I vowed I would never drive that far. But this particular band, Little Caesar, you know, when I was growing up, you know, I loved their music, and they always played the West Coast, and they never ventured out this way, and they just happened to be playing in a place.
Odd Bodies?
No, it wasn't that. It was some type of it was some little bar. I can't even think of the name of it, but it was like some type of courtyard or something.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where that is. It's the Courtyard over in Inglewood.
That might, it might be.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen my buddy's band. He goes, you want free tickets to go see Power Man 5000? I'm like, when? He's Friday. I'm like, yeah. And so we went, and there's legitimately, I guarantee you, 12 opening bands, because one of them wants pay to play to open up for. So, but yeah, it's the Courtyard in Inglewood. It is. Yep. I know exactly where you were. Yeah.
And it was funny because they were actually, you know, I seen that they were playing there, and I was having some problems with my legs, and my doctor had told me that I am not supposed to be traveling. My legs were in really bad shape. And she goes, you can't be traveling anymore. And she goes, if you do travel, she goes, you have to stop once an hour to move your legs and walk around. Well, I seen that they were coming, and they were playing with a band called Junkyard. And I was like, all right, I'm there. So my wife and I made the venture down there to Inglewood, and I was so surprised because this was a band that was huge to me growing up, you know. And here we walked into the venue and just walked in. There's people sitting around the bar drinking, and the bands are just sitting there. And I remember sitting down and literally talking with the guy from Junkyard, David Roach, and he and I was like, I don't know if you remember, but a couple months ago I had you on our radio show and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah. He goes, I think I remember it. And whether he did or not, I mean, he was completely tanked before they even went on stage. He was sitting around drinking, but it was a really cool experience. But that was the farthest that I purposely drove for any type of concert.
Yeah, mine was Cleveland. I want to say in '95, It was for the Ramones White Zombie, which we didn't know if it was the farewell tour for White Zombie at the time either, but it was the farewell tour for the Ramones. I saw them in Cleveland, and 2 days later I saw them in Dayton. So same show. Yeah, this is as far as I've been over to like Indianapolis. I've been down to Northern Kentucky and Newport. Been to Columbus, I don't know how many times, Cincinnati a bunch of times. It's just when I can't make it back like comfortably in a day. And I like to come home and sleep after a concert. I don't like sleeping in a hotel room or nothing like that. So yeah. But yeah, it's no, I take it back. I went and seen last show I saw there in Cleveland was Satyricon and Dimmu Borgir. So
wow.
Yeah. At I can't remember where I went and seen them up there. It was a friend of mine that I used to work with. Hated driving, loved going to concerts. So he was always like, if you drive, I'll pay. And we drove his car. That's the worst part about it. It wasn't even my car. So he's like, he's paying for gas. He's paying for concert tickets. He just wants me to drive because he doesn't want to go by himself. I'm like, sure, I'm there. I'll go. I don't know how many concerts at Bogart's. I don't know how many I saw up, but hell with it.
Well, the Agora in Cleveland, where a lot of shows, take place. That was one of our early investigations too. We investigated there, and that was kind of cool because you go down in the basement and they still literally had stuff that belonged to Marilyn Manson and Trent Reznor, because they actually both used to live in the basement of the Agora back in the day, and they still had boxes of some of their old stuff that they just never got rid of.
That's when you eBay that shit.
Exactly. I don't know whatever happened to it.
Pay some bills.
Whoa.
Well, okay. You want to talk about creepy? The night Dimebag was shot in Columbus
At the Alrosa.
we were supposed to be there. We couldn't get a babysitter. That's the only reason we weren't there. We were supposed to be in Columbus seeing Damage Plan. We couldn't find a babysitter because it was a weeknight. If it had been a weekend, we would have been there. It's literally the only reason
it work out like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because the next day somebody goes, man, did you know that? We're like, what? I was like, we were supposed to be there. And they're like, glad you weren't. I'm like, oh, shit, I'm glad I wasn't.
Yeah, that would have really ruined it for concerts. I think after that, I don't know if I'd be able to go to anything small like that, because like the Little Caesar one that I went to, I mean, like I said, anybody could just walk in. I mean, there was no type of security, and that's what those small venues are like. I mean, they don't really have any type of plan, and you don't know who's going to go in there and what their intentions were.
Well, that's like, I go and I always got 2 pocket knives. For some reason, I started carrying a second one. I always had this one in my pocket since I was like 12. And I forget them a lot. And sometimes you'll go to shows and I'll have to run them back to the car. Other times I'll be in the show and I'll be like, oh shit, I still got my knife in my pocket. And Tina's like, I thought you left it in the car. I'm like, nope. Oh, well, it's like, because I remember concerts back in the day, you walked up, you got to put your hands up, take your hat off, put your wallet and everything in your hat. They run the wine, then your belt goes, woo, and you're like, it's got studs on it. Okay.
That's the way it is out at Blossom Music Center. You go there and they give you the whole pat down and the whole 9 yards. You got to lift your shirt up and walk around to show that you don't have anything tucked in your waistband, and they do the whole wand and check your hair, everything else.
Yeah, because
and I'm like, come on, it's a Barry Manilow concert. What am I gonna sit there and be a bottle of champagne or something? What the hell?
Well, when we went and seen King Crimson, they had the metal detectors, and they're like, okay, what you need to do is you take your hat off, put everything in your hat, and hold your hat, and you had to put your phone and hold it like this. So I'm holding my hat with my phone, and I walk through the metal detector, and they're like, okay, you're good. And I'm like, all right. Usually, man, my belt goes off, or my wallet, or my keys or something. Nope, just walked right through, because they told me you have to cover your phone, because the metal detector could screw up your phone. I'm like, okay, did not know that happens. So, but no, yeah, we've been 2 hours. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut it off here. But yeah, we're gonna talk metal next time.
Let's do it.
So, all right. So, got any plugs that you want to put in there? Tell us where we can find you and all that fun stuff.
You can find us at World Paranormal Investigations on Facebook. We have our official Facebook page you can check us out at. Our website, www.wpiusauk.com. And you can find me, John Brugge, the author. I've got my own author page there on Facebook, John Brugge. And you can also find me at Fiery Vision Publishing, who's my publisher. So,
all right, cool. All right, well, I'm going to say good night and take care. Tell Bea said hi, and hopefully we're going to be seeing each other some conventions coming up too. So,
definitely, we got to get back out there and start doing this again. It's been too.
I got one. Next one's in October for me. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
We have nothing planned, not even investigations as of right now. So hopefully that'll all start going back pretty soon.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys have a good night, and I will talk to you later.
All right. See you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.